Here's a review of my Leatherman Raptors. These are the older version. I think they've come out with a newer version since, but I was very happy with my old one. They have a clip on the side here so that you can tuck it on the inside of a pocket or outside of a pocket if you want. Mine also came with a plastic holster, and I really enjoyed wearing mine on my duty belt because a plastic holster could be easily wiped down, especially if there's some biohazard, and I didn't love the idea of reaching into my pockets with a gloved hand in the middle of a patient interaction where I may have already touched some biohazard or something. So I think these are great. They've served me really well. I don't think there's any substitute for high quality shears. I think that a lot of the disposable cheap shears that your company may give you or fire department may give you will fail you when you need them most. I remember that before I ordered these, one of my first days on my ambulance, I had a significant trauma call where the stock shears on the ambulance were just not cutting through a patient's belt and his thick denim, and had to have one of the firefighters I was with take out his shears to expose the patient's legs. He had broken his legs after falling off a building at a construction site. So these, I think, are the kind of thing that if you're going to be in that environment, there's no substitute for them, regardless of whether you're getting them or your department's getting them for you. I think that these are important. Mine were a gift from a firefighter. So there's several different functions on them. This nub on the top here is a glass breaker or window breaker, which I think is a nice and helpful touch. I've never had to use it to extricate a patient, but I can imagine it would be very helpful, and I'm not sure why they took it off the new edition. I think this is it's obvious that this would be helpful in our line of work. Over here, there's also a seatbelt cutter and oxygen wrench. So there's the standard oxygen wrench opening that you can use for all your O2 bottles. And this is a seatbelt cutter, so you should put the seatbelt in it and pull. I think the seatbelt cutter is very redundant. I haven't seen anybody ever use it, and if you ever wanted to extricate a patient from a motor vehicle collision, I think you'd almost certainly just use your normal shears rather than that seatbelt cutter. But the oxygen wrench is important. I've used the oxygen wrench many times. The shears themselves, they're great. Wide openings in the fingers so that if you're working with a gloved hand, I don't mean latex gloves, I mean like work gloves and like for your turnouts, your fire gloves. Those will work great, they'll fit in here. And the shears themselves are very high quality, haven't really let me down. Used them many, many times in many patient encounters. The shears cut great. You can see they have a ruler on them also and centimeters for laceration. So if your patient has a small lac and you want to document the size of the lac for your PCR, I think that's helpful. And I've used it a couple times. What else? The shears are collapsible, so well, it's difficult to collapse them with one hand. But the main qualm that I have with them is they're a little difficult to clean in the nooks and crannies. So there's so many different joints on this thing. And you can see that it's so intricate that it may be difficult to wipe down some parts of it. So I think that's why in the newer model, they did away with the oxygen wrench seatbelt cutter turnout piece. The new one has a oxygen wrench, but it's just not in a separate turnout piece. I think that was to reduce the number of joints in it so that it would be easier to wipe down. I mean, if you're on a trauma call and you get these bloody, you definitely want to wipe them down and watch out for bloodborne pathogens. So I know some people that'll even take a wrench and try and open them up a little bit to squeaky clean everywhere. I think that was intelligent, but on balance, I think the old ones are nicer because of the window break. So I was really happy with these. I think it's just important to keep them clean. I've heard a complaint from some people that they rust easily. Mine haven't rusted super easily, but I did take a little bit of wax and wipe down all the metal parts to keep them from rusting, especially because I'm always rubbing alcohol pads on them and they're getting wet and I'm washing them after encounters. So they've served me well. I'm not in the field anymore, but I do tuck these into my pocket when I'm volunteering in an ER And if a patient's come in by ambulance and there's a lot that the ambulance guys have been working on, maybe they didn't get to cut some things yet, I think that, these are handy in a ER setting as well. Even if you're not in the pre-hospital setting, if you're not out in the field, these can still be helpful in the ER, especially if it was a short transport time and the crew didn't get to everything yet. So I know a lot of ER technicians or even a couple nurses that'll tuck these into their scrubs, and you never know if something comes in and it's hectic and you might want them. So they've served me well, and definitely consider getting a pair.